Pleiadians told me they built a Stargate to 5D inside the pyramids 10,500 BCE. And then if that wasn't weird enough, then they showed me that I was there. Hello and welcome back to the channel. This is the Michael Denney YouTube channel. Disclosure is coming. Open contact is here, and I am proof of that. Please do me a favor before we get started. Be sure to like and subscribe and do all that stuff that the YouTube algorithm likes, because this message needs to get out. So in this video today, I'm going to share with you some developments that have been happening with me in my continued communications with my Pleiadian advisors, and we have had a reuniting event. We've come back together. We're working together again, and they are guiding me through putting together all of the pieces. And now I am finding, as I'm doing research, sometimes with their help, on the actual dates and the archaeology and the history of everything, that everything that they've told me lines up about who I was way back in Atlantis 13,000 years ago, and what happened to Earth and how Earth fell. Before I started getting all of this actual, historical and archaeological evidence for the truth of this, it was just this crazy story that I believed I was receiving from talking to extraterrestrials. And now I'm finding out that it lines up, which you need to know this if you don't already know. 3.5 years ago, I did not believe in aliens. I did not believe in extraterrestrials. I did not believe in ancient civilizations. I did not believe in Atlantis or Lemuria. I did not believe that people could channel. I didn't believe in any of that stuff. Yes, I was a meditator and I did Qigong and a lot of other spiritual things, shaman, but I didn't believe in any of that. So for me to be telling you this is completely out of character for me, and it means that some major thing has happened to bring me to the place where not only do I believe it, but that I have evidence to prove it. So either I've completely lost my mind and I've gone out of my way to find correlations for this, or something is really happening here. Now, bear in mind, I didn't know anything about Atlantis. I didn't know anything about Lemuria. I didn't know anything about the pyramids. I didn't care about them. I didn't know about, a lot of the things. I had a vague understanding that there's some people that believe that the pyramids and the Sphinx were built, before the ice ages, and that's about it. So for me to be talking the way I'm talking, like I said, what I'm trying to say is that I'm not some guy who was looking for some way to create some huge Bashar type scenario. That's not what's going on here. I am still skeptical, but the evidence is becoming so overwhelming that I can't help but accept what has been happening to me is the truth. So I'm going to take you through it. I've got a lot of stuff we're going to look at. Got some lists about what the ETs said to me, and then we're going to take a look at what the actual evidence says, and then we're going to take a look at a graph to see how it all lines up in terms of not only archaeology and history, but it also lines up with Vedic astrology. It also lines up with the understanding of the yugas, the yuga cycles, going from the golden age to Kali Yuga. It all lines up. And so first, let's just get into the crazy story. I'm going to start from the beginning. And I'm going to give to you in a list, because remember, this was coming to me at piecemeal. They didn't dump all of this on me at once, because my head, it probably would have killed me. I'm not kidding. I probably would have died from the overwhelming craziness of it all. So they were giving me little bits and pieces here and there, and I was creating this mosaic of like, what are they telling me happened and who was I? And now that I've got at least a much larger picture, if not the full picture, now the Pleiadians are saying, okay, now, like I'll be watching YouTube or something and they'll say, click on that one. And it'll be something about the pyramids and the alignment to the stars and all that. I'm like, okay, whatever. And then they'll be hitting me with, that was you, and you did that, and you did this. And it all lines up with everything that was told to me. It's all lining up and making sense. This is getting real, everybody. It's getting real. All right, so I'm going to put a link below in case you're new and you can see the video, How I Became an Extraterrestrial, which was, I've got video and audio evidence of my first CE5 interactions with extraterrestrials and, how crazy all that was. So let's just go ahead and get started. I hope you're still here with me. All right, so let's start with what they told me. Now, this is the full picture as I know it now because more stuff has been coming over the past few days. All right, so the fall of Atlantis and the Great Flood according to extraterrestrials' telepathic messages to me. So the first one was that I was king of Earth who was responsible for the rise of the Dark Force elites. They didn't use that term. What they said was, and again, my brain is coming apart as I'm getting this higher dimensional energy that's concentrated. There's all this DMT in my brain naturally occurring, and I'm off, being pulled and twisted into all these different crazy experiences. And so one of the first things they tell me is that you were king of Earth. I'm like, king of Earth? How is that even possible? How can one person be king of the whole planet? I'm thinking to myself, I have to be crazy. And so for a couple of weeks, they were telling me that, and I was just blowing it off like I've lost it. I was really thinking I was losing it. I was starting to panic, and I was starting to really like dissociate. It was crazy. And then E.T., my friend, shows up, and this is the closest I've gotten to being yelled at by them. And he says, it's very important that you believe what we're telling you. And I'm getting hit with all of this incredible energy and blissful, and I, because I appreciated how this being had been communicating with me and something about it, I said, okay. And I just said, I'll believe you. It doesn't make any sense to me, but okay, I'll believe you. Now I know why it's so important. So that's the first thing they say. I was king of Earth who was responsible for the rise of the Dark Force elites. So after they say you're king of Earth, and after weeks of wrestling with that and getting, slapped into place, like, you have to believe us. This is incredibly important for the whole world that you believe what we're telling you. Then what happens is I get a visit from an extremely powerful being. I think he must have been a ninth dimensional being. I know that sounds crazy, but once you've experienced higher, beings from different dimensional energy levels, you start to tell when you're in the presence of some really higher dimensional being. And this being said, you don't understand. You were once a very powerful king. And there were decisions that you made and things that you did that resulted in the Dark Force elites taking over and enslaving the world. The people that are doing all the, tinfoil hat stuff, that's me. People who are doing all of that stuff, you had a part in them becoming powerful. And because you were king and you were part of this, we're telling you this because we are giving you some power and we're giving you some things to do so that you can balance the world again, bring it back to where it was. Now, if you don't think that's a mind fuck, then I don't know. But still, this is all just intellectual knowledge that I'm like, okay, it hadn't hit me emotionally yet because I hadn't been shown I hadn't remembered. I had just been told it, and so I thought I was bonkers. But I said I would. As this is where I came up with my, my current philosophy of I take everything they tell me at face value, and I don't become emotionally attached to any of it. I don't care if it's true or not. I just accept it. Well, now I'm starting to believe it. So that's what that was all about. King of Earth, who was responsible for the rise of the Dark Force elites. Then later, I'm told I'm king of Atlantis during the descending cycle of Satya Yuga, 11,500 to 6702 BCE. Now, again, it's not given to me in those words, but that's what I was told, that I was the king of Atlantis. Again, they tell me this, and I didn't believe Atlantis existed as they're telling me. I'm like, Atlantis is a fantasy. It's a New Age fantasy. It doesn't exist. It's like King Arthur. It never happened. So they're telling me that I was king of Atlantis during, and then I'm filling it in human terms, in the descending cycle of Satya Yuga, the Golden Age. And they're telling me that you were living in Atlantis, you were a demigod, you were multidimensional, and you were there working directly with us. And this was at Satya Yuga, the Golden Age, when human beings and extraterrestrials and land spirits and gods were coming and going all over planet Earth. And that whole, again, that New Age mythology, they're saying that no, that's a real thing, that really happened, and you were there. I came to find out that I was counseled by the Pleiadians, who helped design and build the pyramids. So according to them, the Pleiadians came to me one day, and they told me that's who they were. After I asked, "Are you the Pleiadians?" And I didn't believe in Pleiadians. I was doing okay believing that extraterrestrials existed, but in terms of Pleiadians, that's such New Age. I don't know. And it's just like people say. These beings show up. Now, they're not physical. I'm seeing and sensing them and telepathically being communicated to them. Powerful energy, blissful, crazy, powerful, higher dimensional energy. And they're tall, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, Nordic-looking, like elf-like creatures. And they say that they were my counselors when I was king of Atlantis, and that together we were coming up with the technology for the pyramids. And they were working with humans, and we came up with this idea together and the technology together. So the pyramids were my pet project designed to create a frequency generator to increase 5D. This is going to become very important later when you find out more information, but that's what they're telling me. They're telling me that the pyramids were frequency generators that created an aura around the earth, and they were designed to shift the frequency of human beings up to 5D. That was the whole point of the pyramids, and that we had come up with this together. Me and the Pleiadians, the Arcturians, and other humans, and human priests, and human engineers, and all this stuff. They're giving me this absolute science fiction fantasy, and they're telling me this is what happened and this is who you were. So according to them, I was attempting to help all of humanity ascend to the fifth dimensional frequency before Kali Yuga Dark Age. So again, they're telling me this, and there's some historical information I find out later. I didn't know that. So they're telling me that you're doing this because you wanted to save all of humanity, and you wanted all humans to shift up to 5D, and that's why you were involved in it, and it was very important to you. I was attempting to help all of humanity ascend to 5D frequency before Kali Yuga, Dark Age. In other words, I knew that the golden age that we were living in was descending, and it was going to crash into Kali Yuga, the Dark Ages, horrible, evil, And I was trying to prevent it. I was trying to prevent anybody from going down. I was going to stop all that. Why would I do such a thing, you ask? We're going to find out later. After some time, the Pleiadians counseled that I dismantle the pyramids before the frequency shift. So they were all on board with me. They wanted me to create the pyramids and to create this technology so that human beings could shift up to 5D. But then they come to me after we've been doing it and they say, okay, it's time to shut it down because we're going to shift. We're going to shift down and we got to shut the technology down. And apparently I didn't want to hear that. So after some time, the Pleiadians counseled that I dismantle the pyramids before a frequency shift. I refused to listen to the Pleiadians. They explained that to continue to use the technology would create an energy collapse. So they told me this. I'm now finding out. That's why they were counseling me. They were saying, listen, what we've been doing is great, but now it's over. And if you keep using this technology, it's going to create an energetic strain on the earth and it's going to cause a horrific collapse. You have to stop. And for some reason, I wouldn't listen to them. Doesn't make sense, does it? It'll make sense in a little bit. So after some time, counsel I dismantled the pyramids before a frequency shift. I refused to listen to the Pleiadians. They explained that to continue would create energy collapse. Advanced spiritual practitioners in Atlantis and Lemuria successfully ascended to 5D Earth frequency. This is what it was all about. I got off track. But the reason why the ETs got involved in it and the reason why a lot of humans got involved in it, Lemurians and Atlanteans got involved in doing it, is because they knew that this energy shift was coming, that the golden age was going to start going downhill and they were going to get off the bus. They were going to get off and upgrade to 5D, and we were giving them the ability to do that. That the pyramids were a Stargate. They were a Stargate, not necessarily to another planet, although I'm open to that idea. But the whole point of it was to shift up to 5D. And while I'm having this argument, or around that same time I'm arguing with the Pleiadians about shutting this down, higher level practitioners in Atlantis and Lemuria and other places are shifting up. They're leaving. They're going up to 5D while all of the pyramids are doing their job. So advanced spiritual practitioners in Atlantis and Lemuria successfully ascended to 5D Earth frequency. I was given one last chance to ascend with the ETs, but I was unwilling to abandon 3D humans. As I'm sitting here telling you this, I can feel their energy. I can feel in my heart, I can feel their sadness, that this was very saddening to them. Because I was the guy who spearheaded all of this, and I was the guy responsible for bringing together the ETs and the human beings and, you know, orchestrating all of this. It was my power that allowed all that to happen, and I was supposed to be the last one on the train to 5D, and I said, I'm not going. I'm not gonna leave. I'm not gonna let people suffer. I'm gonna stay and I'm gonna make it work. So I was given one last chance to ascend with ETs, but I was unwilling to abandon 3D humans. I refused to dismantle the pyramids, which resulted in massive pyramid energy malfunctions. So this is stuff, you know, a lot of this I'm putting together. I'm like getting bits and pieces, and I'm, you know, making some educated guesses, and this is one of them. Because I've heard that there's evidence, if anybody's been inside the pyramids, maybe you've seen this, but inside the pyramids, you can see stains on the walls from fires, from explosions. And so I believe what happened was, and we'll find out why, but because the energy was shifting down, the pyramids malfunctioned. They stopped working. After repeated attempts to dissuade me, the ETs left Earth and returned to the 5D frequency. And this brings up a lot. These aren't my emotions I'm feeling. They're not this person's emotions. They're either my spirit is remembering or I'm tapping into their, they wanted me to make this video. They were a part of this, so I'm doing my best to get the story right. So this was very saddening for them, but they had to leave Earth. And they had to leave me behind. And they had to disconnect with me because my frequency had gone down so far that it wasn't healthy for them to continue to interact. So they had to cut me loose, and they left. It was very traumatic for me, and apparently for them. So when the ETs left, I became fully 3D, and I was vulnerable without extraterrestrial energy protection. The remaining elites proposed that we use the pyramid frequency technology to enslave humans. So if you can imagine, I'm a shadow of myself. I've lost all of my spiritual power. I'm just this normal 3D person, and I'm in a huge amount of pain, and I'm angry, and nothing's working. Everything that I committed myself to had stopped working and fallen apart. And so all of my friends were gone. All of my family had left, and we're in a higher dimension, and I couldn't get there. And I was stuck, or so I thought. And so then the remaining elites, many of whom had stayed behind because of me, the shift in energy changed their mindset, and they started thinking in ways we would have never even imagined. They started saying, we need to use the technology to enslave humans. It's for their own good. We need to hold on to our power, and we need to enslave them, and we need to use this frequency energy to adjust their brain waves, and we can take over what the ETs were doing and communicate to them. Does this sound familiar? Does this sound like some of the crazy tinfoil hat stuff you're hearing? Well, that's because that's when it all started. The elites proposed we use pyramid frequency technology to enslave humans. I angrily refused. This created a global war which resulted in the use of energy weapons of mass destruction. So I was furious with them. I was furious with everybody, but I was especially furious with them for even suggesting that. And this started a war. So it started a rebellion. Many of these people thought that I had lost the vision. They had come up with this vision. They thought somehow that this was my vision, and we were allies against the extraterrestrials. That's why I've been telling you this war that's going on, this reverse engineering thing that we think is just now happening. It's been going on for 13,000 years. I just got hit with a huge amount of energy. So the ETs are saying this, what the dark forces are doing with this shooting ETs down and reverse engineering their craft. It's been going on for 13,000 years. That's when it all started. And these people started getting that into their head, and I was like, the ETs are not our enemies. They're our friends. I'm trying to help what you're doing. And so it started a war, and all kinds of nasty things happened. I know that because the ETs told me that. And they don't like to tell me things that are going to bother me and hurt me, but they made that very clear that I was a part of that. It's not an easy thing to live with. All right, so things get worse. I was betrayed by my own council and was assassinated in my own chambers. So the Pleiadians showed me that a while back, and that was extremely painful. I didn't remember any of it, but the feelings that came up, and I'm feeling them now, incredibly painful. These were people that I trusted, that were the people that I trusted the most. And they went behind my back, and they were bought off or whatever. And I was assassinated in my own quarters in Atlantis. This resulted in higher dimensional councils deciding to send comets to crash into the ice caps. So, a lot of things happened. I couldn't fit it all on one page, but so with me out of the picture, then these corrupt elites, who sadly I have some responsibility in their mental shift, with me out of the picture, they decide to take over all the technology they can find, and they start trying to use it against the extraterrestrials and against other humans. And bear in mind, these weapons, which is the same for nuclear weapons now, is that when you use them, it doesn't just affect the third dimension. It goes into quantum states and starts affecting all of the dimensions. So it becomes a threat to all life in all dimensions. And so the higher councils got together, and very reluctantly they said, we got to wipe out that civilization or they'll destroy not just themselves but other dimensions and other worlds. And if they get a hold of our technology and they start going to other civilizations, it'll be awful, and we can't let that happen. So they decide to send the comets, which crash into the North Pole ice caps, which at that point are anywhere between 1 and 2 miles thick, and it vaporizes them, and of course it causes earthquakes, tidal waves, and floods like you can't even imagine, and wipes out all traces of society and almost all human life, and a lot of, this is where the megafauna die off during this time. So this created the flood event disaster, destroying all of advanced civilization on Earth. So this is, as I'm thinking about it, it's okay. As I'm talking about it, it's extremely, extremely painful to feel. But I'm just got to the part, that's all that they told me. So they told me this. This isn't proof yet. None of this is proven. This is just a story. This is just some kind of weird cable television series mythical story that I'm being told. And I'm being shown this, and I'm having past life memories and emotions, and I'm seeing it, and they're communicating with me, and but none of it's proven yet. Until now. So here's the actual timeline of the Atlantis pyramids and flood event according to historical dates and evidence. So, the descending cycle of Satya Yuga began in 11,501 BC and lasted until 6701 BCE. So what is the descending cycle? I didn't pull this up. I wish I had, but maybe I can find the yugas here and you'll get an idea if you haven't already. I'm pretty there. They're there. All right, so you have the precession, which is this is science. This is astronomy. We're a 26,000 year cycle where the Earth's wobble goes through all 12 of the zodiac signs, and it takes 26,000 years to do it. So the yugas, you have Satya Yuga, which is the golden age. You have Treta Yuga, which is people are 75% connected to the spirit. You have Dwapara Yuga, where people are 50% or 50% of the population are connected to spirit. And then you have Kali Yuga, which is the age of extreme darkness, right? And it goes in cycles. There's an ascending cycle where we are now in an ascending cycle, and you go up the cycles to Satya, you reach the pinnacle, and then you start to descend back down through Satya, Treta, Dwapara, and Kali. So you can see all the dates here. I've been using this for other videos. But so that's the cycle. You can see there that Atlantis had sunk in the descending part of Satya Yuga. This is something, I didn't make this up. This is just, we're looking at, again, some evidence in other places. Not just scientific evidence, but historical, philosophical, mythological. And when you look at it, it's exactly what they told me. It's exactly. All right, let's keep going. Sorry, this is heavy stuff for me. All right, so the age of Leo, fire element, begins in 10,970 BC. The Sphinx was built in 10,500 BC to align with the sign of Leo. Why is this important? You've been watching me do these videos about Ketu is going over the sign of Leo and is going to end up in the sign of Magha in December 26, and I'm hinting that that's when everything is going to change, when people are going to shift. Well, to give more background to that, 10,500 BCE, the Sphinx was aligned directly with Leo in the astronomical, not the Vedic or the Western astrological zodiac, but the astronomical zodiac. According to the astronomical zodiac, that was in the time of Leo. And so the Sphinx, as you know, if you can tell by looking at it, that it's incredibly old, and that the head is much smaller than the body, which means that somebody, one of the later dynastic pharaohs, had recarved the lion's head into the head of one of the pharaohs. So one of the pharaohs had a big ego trip, and he knew what he was doing, because what that meant, the Sphinx was part of this whole energetic setup. And this is something I just was shown last night. The Pleiadians showed me this, that what was happening is that this Sphinx, which had been carved, I believe, out of natural sandstone or something, some kind of natural stone that was there, and it was aligned directly with Leo, and this has to do with the king. So when you know the sign of Leo, and you get to the nakshatra of Magha, which is at the very, which would have been at the very end of the, towards the end of the Satya Yuga, would have been aligned with that. This gets directly the power of the ancestors. So I'm looking at this from the outside now, and I'm thinking, you know what, if I was this king, I would have wanted to take the power of the Pitris, the ancestors, which is what Leo gets, or Magha, which is the most powerful aspect of Leo, the star Regulus, gets its power from the ancestors. So the king, the true king, gets his power from the ancestors in higher dimensions. So if I was that king, I would have wanted to take that power and use it to increase my power, and to funnel that power into this project I was working on. That's exactly what the Sphinx does. It faces east, and it aligns that energy directly into the pyramids. So the pyramids were creating this energy to empower the world so people could shift up. And as you know, the pyramids are also thought to be stargates that align with the stars of Orion, which are associated with the afterlife. And so modern people think that the Egyptians were obsessed with the afterlife. They weren't obsessed with the afterlife. We were creating a stargate that took people to the fifth dimension, to a higher version of themselves, which we now call the afterlife. The afterlife is nothing more than higher dimensions, nothing more than 5D. So this Sphinx was taking that energy and sending it directly into the pyramids to give it spiritual power. Everybody knew who, and this isn't easy for me to say, I don't get any ego rush out of this. This is what they were showing me. Everybody knew who that Sphinx was. They knew who it represented. And it was a way of saying, this is the guy who's creating all of this. He's doing all of this. He's devoting his life so that human beings can shift. It's not about the kings and only the kings like they will tell you now. Oh, this is so the pharaohs could get to the afterlife. It wasn't about the pharaohs. It was about everybody. It was about human beings, all human beings, being able to shift up. So, the age of Leo, which is a fire sign, begins in 1079, blah, blah, Sphinx built in 10,500 to align with the sign of Leo. The Giza pyramids align with Orion's belt at the same time, 10,500 BC. Now, that's a fact. What I'm going through right now is a fact. That is an astronomical fact that the Sphinx is aligned to Leo at 10,500 BC. And that the pyramids, the three pyramids on Giza, are aligned exactly with the belt of Orion, exactly at 10,500 BC. 10,500 BC is when the people on Earth who were working their spirituality, that's when they left. That's what this was all about. I just got hit with energy as I said that. They've been very insistent on that. But there's a whole bunch of people that left this planet 10,500 BC. They went to 5D. All right, so the sign of Leo represents the reign of the spiritual king who gets his power from the Pitris, the light beings, the ancestors. So the age of Cancer, which is a water sign, begins 8,810 BCE. So the Sphinx and the pyramids were no longer aligned with Leo by the time of the age of Cancer. So you get it? This was a short-term deal. This was a one-time thing where, we had a short window to work with, and we had to get it aligned just right. I think it was aligned with Regulus and the Magha nakshatra, although don't take me to court on that because we're dealing with astrology versus astronomy. The measurements are a little different. But once you get into the age of Cancer, that whole thing doesn't work. I'm going to tell you why. So the age of Cancer begins 8810 BCE. Sphinx and pyramids no longer aligned with Leo. The transition from fire to water in Vedic astrology creates a Gandanta point, which is a very volatile, unstable position. Now, I'm giving you this stuff. I'm not expecting you to just believe what I tell you. Go research it. Go look it up. Go to whatever AI platform you want and tell them to tell you, what happened here, what happened there. Go and double check my research. It was hard for me to believe any of this until now. The evidence is just overwhelming. So in Vedic astrology, it's well known that when a planet goes through a Gandanta point, that planet, the person is going to have huge issues. So a Gandanta point is when there's a transition from a fire sign to a water sign, or a water sign to a fire sign. And all hell breaks loose. It's just horrific when this happens. And it can be really horrible. So the Earth is no different. When the Earth goes through that astronomical thing and it shifts from a fire sign to a water sign, the Gandanta point, which is before the shift and after the shift, that chunk of time is called the Gandanta point. So as you're still in the fire sign moving towards water, the problems start, and then as you hit that point in between, it goes crazy. And then as you're moving out of that sign, it continues to be a problem, and then things mellow out. So I didn't see this until I started looking at the dates. And when you look at the dates, what it means is the pyramids were created just before. Like by a few hundred years, you're entering into what we would call the Gandanta point. Even though it was still in Leo for a while after that, it was in Gandanta, which means it was all messed up. This is the only time that people would have gotten the most out of Leo, the most out of it, and then been able to shift. If I'm right about all this. So it turns out that the Younger Dryas lasted from 10,900 to 9,700 BCE. Now I'm giving that because the date is off by like 100 years of what I'm going to tell you, but it's right in the ballpark. So according to scientists, there was this thing called the Younger Dryas event, which is associated with all kinds of problems. Even people who don't believe in the comet theory, creating the flood, they still admit that this period was hugely disastrous for life on planet Earth. And it just so happens that aligns with what the Gandanta point would have been. Almost exactly. And there's no reason that science can't be off by 100 or 200 years. And if that's the case, then it's right on target. Okay, so according to Plato, so now we're going to get into history. So again, modern historians poo-poo Plato. They say he was making it up. There's no evidence anywhere that says he was making up this story about Atlantis. Nowhere. That's just something that modern historians say. Oh, he was making that up to make a point. Yeah, prove it. Cite something else that Plato says somewhere, or somebody else at that time says about Plato and says he was making it up. You won't find it. He believed what he was writing. He was telling people what he had been told by his relative who had got it directly from an Egyptian priest. The Europeans didn't know anything about Atlantis. They didn't know Atlantis existed until they went down and talked to the Egyptians, who said, oh yeah, Atlantis. Oh yeah, those are the guys that started the whole thing. Everything we have came from them. They were very clear about that. They were very clear that the dynastic Egyptians were very clear that they weren't the first ones in Egypt. They weren't the first ones there, that they were the people that were there from the first time. That's exactly what they call it, the first time. We'll get into that. So according to Plato, Atlantis sunk in the global flood event approximately 9600 BCE. So again, Plato is just repeating what he was told, and it sounds to me like an approximation. And if we take his approximation exactly, it turns out to be 9600 BCE, which is when? The tail end of Satya Yuga, entering into the Gandanta period, when all hell's breaking loose. So the world flood event did happen, if you believe the Younger Dryas event. It happened during the late stages of Leo, during the Gandanta point. The world flood occurred during the last stages of the descending Satya Yuga cycle. So again, looking back at the Yugas, and I put this down here a really long time ago, but it turns out it's true. Where's my Yugas? 9600 BCE. You can see here that it's somewhere around that where it's descending. It's descending down into Satya Yuga. You can see Göbekli Tepe is just after that. So whoever survived were making places like Göbekli Tepe and others to chronicle the event. They were still technically in the Golden Age, but because of the huge shift that had happened, crazy shift that had happened, it was nothing like it was. Oh, that's not what I want. All right, so the pyramid's interior walls show signs of electrical explosions. I already talked about that. According to Islamic sources, so now we're going to get into some more historical sources. Now, this doesn't mean that it's proven. It just means that there's stories out there from a really long time ago, people talking. So we have Plato talking about Atlantis, and now we're going to hear from, I believe, they're Islamic sources that are very old. And here's what they say about the pyramids. So according to, where was I? World Flood Event, Gandanta. According to Islamic sources, the king who built the pyramids lived 300 years before the flood. So if the flood was at 9600, that would have meant that he was on the planet 10,000 BCE. This is going to become important later. So I'm putting together these facts, and I'm going to show you on a graph. You're going to see, oh my God. And again, why is the point of this? Is because I didn't believe any of this. I was just getting this weird information from beings, and I was just saying yes to all of it. And now that I'm looking at the historical, the astronomical, the archaeological, the mythological, I'm finding that it all lines up. And I didn't know anything about this. I wasn't like an expert in any of this stuff. So this isn't something that could have just bubbled out of my unconscious, because that's what I thought. I'm thinking, this is coming out of my unconscious, until I realized I didn't know anything about this. That the things that my friends are telling me, this anecdotal, reality that my light being friends are telling me, when I look at the objective data that's here, that has been here for hundreds and thousands of years, it lines up perfectly. And there's no way I could have known that. So, according to Islamic sources, the king who built the pyramids lived 300 years before the flood. According to the Pleiadians, the king of Atlantis was assassinated 300 years before the flood. So that lines up, that's pretty interesting. That when the Pleiadians say that I was offed, that according to the Islamic sources, they say that the king who built the pyramids lived 300 years before the flood. Okay, so according to dynastic Egypt, Zep Tepi, which translates as the first time, the gods from a sunken island founded their civilization. Do I even need to elaborate? They believed that gods, and I could get into some of the stuff I've heard, which I haven't verified, which sound really good, but even the stuff that is verified, that I've verified in terms of that some new agey guy didn't make it up. The dynastic Egyptians said that during the first time, which was when the original civilization was built, there were gods living on earth who ruled the world, and that those gods who survived the sinking of an island made their way to Egypt and taught them everything, and that's where the second dynastic civilization came from. All right, now let's take a look at this graph here. So I made a graph of, I had some help. I'm not a fan of AI for all kinds of things, but research and making graphs and pictures, AI is great. So AI put all this together. The timeline of the pyramids to the flood disaster, and this is according to the Pleiadians. So Leo enters the Maga Pada 1. I'm going to make a video I have already about why that's so important, but that is the most powerful place in Leo. That is the direct connection to the fifth dimension, to the light beings who are the primordial ancestors of all conscious beings. This is why Leo is so important for kings. This is why whoever that king was who built the pyramids, he aligned the Sphinx directly to Leo. There's a reason for it. So that Leo enters the Maghapada 1 at 13,455 BCE. So at the peak of Satya Yuga, King Surid's vision. Now this is, I'm not saying this is just a possible timeline. 10,500 BCE. Remember that the king of Atlantis was multidimensional. He was a demigod. He was basically an immortal, so he could live for thousands of years. All right, so the construction of the Sphinx was 10,400 BCE. The completion of the Giza pyramids, 10,300 BC. The start of the Leo Cancer Gandanta passage would have been about 10,270. ETs advised the king to power down the technology around 10,030 BC. The ETs withdraw their power and the king loses his demigod status. That would be about same exact 10,030 BC. The assassination of King Surid would have been 9,900, and then the Younger Dryas Cataclysm would have been 9,600. So I'm not married to that timeline. I'm just trying to show you that this is, and you know, and again, the Pleiadians aren't giving me dates. I'm trying to put it together. So this is the broad understanding of how it could have been. I'm not married to these dates, but that's an outline of what I think might have happened. All right, that's it, my friends. We've got a live guided interdimensional meditation tonight in about 45 minutes from the time I'm videotaping this. So I appreciate all of your help, and please put your comments and everything into the video in case you like it. Like, subscribe, etc., etc. So we've got a lot of things going on the channel here. So I am teaching interdimensional mentorship, which is extraterrestrial light beings will mentor you directly on how you can make your shift to 5D. What that means is you have a session with me and I simply show up. I don't know what's going on, and you can work directly with them and I will channel whatever they say to you about that, and you can ask questions and I'll let them answer, and if they want and you want, I'll chime in and give you my understanding. This is found at thunderwizard.com, and it's a specific subscription, not the free subscription. You have to look for this specific interdimensional mentorship. We also have channeled personal guidance from ETs, and that can be found at channel.thunderwizard.com. And you can also have monthly sessions with me where we get together once a month and I channel them for you. But if you just want a session, you can go to channel.thunderwizard.com. I'm having a blast with these. You can see it in the videos, and there's more to come. We do have the 50% off, which is where I video the session and then I will upload it as a video for the channel, or full price where you get to record it and keep it for yourself and keep it private. I've also got this, which I'm very excited about, which is the ET Channeling and Interdimensional Communication Zoom Workshop. That again, subscribed at thunderwizard.com specifically for that, not just for free. You got to look for that. There's a lot of people, subscribing for free at the thunderwizard.com, and that's great, but it doesn't get you anything. If you want something, you have to go and get a specific membership and get the benefits of that. All right, so that's it. We still got live CE5s every Saturday, and we do live ET channelings every now and then. And that's it, my friends. please support the channel. I really appreciate it. Until we get rid of this money thing, I gotta eat. And yeah, so your actual support of the channel in real ways helps me to continue to do this work. All right, that's it, my friends. I love you all. Please be very good to yourselves, and I'll see you very, very soon.